Now then, I do. Today I'm going to give you a review of this, the Axminster AT260SPT spiral-headed planer thicknesser. I've had it a few months now, so I'm going to go through the buying process that I had with Axminster. I'm going to talk about some of the issues that I had when I first had this delivered. I'm going to go through the setup process, the adjustability, the performance of it, and finally I'll give you my overall thoughts on it. So stick around for the rest of the video and let's get cracking. Right, as I said in the introduction, I bought this a few months ago, probably about 4 or 5 months ago. And I bought it because I wanted an upgrade from the Record Power PT260 that I had. I wanted something a bit more robust, a bit more reliable, a bit easier to adjust, and something hopefully a lot quieter. I had a look around at a lot of vendors, and all of this style of planer thicknesser, it was about the same price everywhere. Unfortunately, this was right after the big price hikes that we'd seen, so I ended up paying a lot of money for this. It was just over £2,000, which I think is almost extortionate, but I'll come on to more about the value proposition this offers later. So I ordered this from Axminster, mostly because I know that Axminster's customer service is generally pretty good. So I placed my order, and within about a week this rocked up along with the big dust extractor that I've got. However, when I came to unpack it, I realised that it had obviously fallen over in the van. There's a bit of damage to the filter on the dust extractor, but when I came to set up the planer thicknesser, everything was bent on it. Now there is a lot of adjustment on this, so I spent a lot of time messing about trying to get it all back into alignment before I realised that actually it was pointless, because the table had bowed and lots of things were snapped off and stuff like that, which isn't great when you're paying more than £2,000 for a machine. And actually, because I'd bought other machines with it and paid for delivery, the total was significantly more than £2,000. So anyway, I got on the phone to Axminster, to their customer services department, and to be perfectly fair to them, they were absolutely brilliant. Within a couple of hours, they'd already agreed the purchase order to send me a brand new one at their expense as well. I didn't have to pay for any more postage and packing or shipping or anything like that. Now, initially, they said that this machine was now out of production. I'd bought one of the last ones in the country, and it was due to be replaced by their new professional range version. Now, from what I've been led to believe, that machine is exactly the same as this, with the exception that both beds lift up together. It does also retail for a little bit more money. Anyway, as it panned out, they couldn't send one of those because the instruction manuals hadn't been finalised for them, so they weren't willing to send them out. And I thought that was going to be in for a long wait. But then I got a phone call the next day saying that they'd actually found one of these in stock at one of the stores, so they were going to get it sent out immediately. And from ringing them up to tell them that mine was damaged to taking delivery of a new one, it was less than a week. And that delay was mostly due to me not being able to be at home because of work. So they were really good. They sorted it out free of charge, and they sorted it out very, very quickly. So that's the buying process covered. Next is the setup. The setup on this, how can I describe it? It's an absolute pain, to be perfectly honest. The initial setup is fine. You know, you get a few bits like the plastic cover here, the flappy paddle, the fence, and the guard. They're very quick and easy to put on. But the trouble comes in setting it up to take your first cuts. Honestly, I would set aside at least a full day to do this. So this machine comes with a relatively comprehensive instruction manual. It's quite a thick book. The pictures in it are all sensible and easy to understand, and the text is generally well written for a machine instruction manual, and it guides you through the setup as though you would be setting this up without any problems. If you have problems during the setup, there's some basic fault finding stuff, but there's nothing too detailed about the other things that you can do to set this up. And what I found is that the range of adjustment on this is incredibly comprehensive. It doesn't cover it all in the manual though, but everything is adjustable on this. Obviously the fence is adjustable in the garden, stuff like that, but the tables are also fully adjustable. And when I say fully, I don't just mean with the 2 bolts that you normally get on this side. It has a bolt for each corner. The rollers are adjustable, the spiral head is adjustable, and the planer bed, the thickness in bed, is also fully adjustable. So if you do any of it wrong, you can very quickly tie yourself into knots because there's so much more adjustment available. However, with patience, it means that you can get it absolutely bang on. Now, I don't have that much patience to get it perfect, and to be honest, I don't think that really matters when you're working with wood, which is a medium that moves anyway. So across an 8-foot long board that's 8 inches wide, I've got this to within about 0.2 millimeters, which for anything that I'm doing is way more than good enough. If I spent more time, I could probably get it perfect, but it's a case of diminishing returns at that point, and I don't think it is worth it. Right, so let's now move on to the setup and adjustability of this machine. So firstly, I'm going to just loosen this off, this bolt here. Just keep this finger tight. And I'm going to pull this arm out here just to disengage it from the little retaining knob that it has, and that means that I can swing this fully out of the way. Next, I'm going to undo the lever for the fence, slide it out, and store this behind. So I'm just going to start with the infeed table first. This is obviously your locking knob, and when you lift the table up, it's got this little loose bolt on a metal plate here. That swings down and it effectively stops the table falling down. So this locking lever, this slots under this bolt, and when you twist it down, it obviously works like a cam and it locks the table in place. Now these 2 bolts are what you would normally use to adjust the table. The outfeed table has got exactly the same setup. Now what I found with the old Record Power PT260 is that had this exact same setup, but you could never get it exactly right. You could get it close, but trying to get it perfect was almost impossible. However, this machine has something a little bit special in regards to that. So if I just pull this down, around the back here, there's this little plate. And if you unscrew this, it just comes off with 3 screws. So trying to do this around a camera is not the easiest thing in the world. So if you look just in here, there's this black screw with a locking nut and washer on it. And that is one of the adjustment screws. And then likewise, if you take this panel off, you have the front one for this table. So you've got 2 adjustment screws, front and back on this side, and then you've got the same on this side as well. And the outfeed table has exactly the same arrangement. So I'm just going to put this plate back on while I talk about what this effectively means. So you've got all 4 corners adjustable on this. Now that does mean that you can get it absolutely perfect, obviously providing your table is flat, which these are. But what it also means is that it takes an extremely long time to get it right, because every time you adjust one of those 4 screws it affects all of the other 3. And when I was doing it, I actually spent a couple of days trying to sort it out, and it ended up being a case where every time I adjusted one, I was adjusting it by maybe, I don't know, 1/16 of a turn or something like that, just trying to sneak up on a perfect fit. And I've just dropped that screw. But yeah, it does mean that you can get a perfect fit if you've got the patience to do it and you don't mind getting yourself out of a mess when you mess it up. So that's the adjustability of the in-feed table. As I said, the out-feed table is exactly the same. Also, if I just bring you round again, this is what you use to raise and lower the in-feed table, and this effectively just pushes on this metal plate here. Now by undoing this plate as I showed you before and loosening off that back retaining bolt, it means that you can actually move this left to right a little bit, and when you tighten it back up, providing you hold it still, it means that you can change the alignment of the in-feed table, just in case it's slightly out. It shouldn't be, but you never know. Now if I pop this up again, right, so if you look down here, that is what your rollers are mounted on. I don't know if you'll be able to see it under here. There you go. Now those plates, these plates, they're spring loaded, and to adjust the rollers you can take off this cover and this cover, and there are bolts under there that go straight down and screw into a retaining nut that's on the back of these plates, and it means that you can raise and lower your rollers as well. So down here you've got the ubiquitous lever to change it from planing to thicknessing and vice versa. I've marked it with a TNP just so I don't forget. You've then got your locking lever, and you've got your wheel for raising and lowering with a digital readout. So I'm going to raise this right up so that we can get underneath this and have a look. Right, so we're trying to get everything coplanar and parallel and all that sort of stuff. So we've left the cutter block exactly how it is. We've then used all 8 of the bolts to adjust the in-feed and out-feed tables to get that properly squared off with the cutter block. We now need to do the same thing to the thicknessing bed. So I've got the thicknessing bed fully raised here, and if I zoom in, so just here, these Allen head bolts, they're your securing bolts, and there's one in each corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, and right next to them there's a big grub screw on each one. So if you undo these Allen bolts, you can raise and lower these grub screws one corner at a time to try and level out the thicknessing bed. Now again, this takes a fair while, but it does mean that you can get it absolutely perfect. Right, so just to cover it again, you can adjust all 4 corners of the outfeed table, all 4 corners of the infeed table to get them perfectly coplanar with the cutter head. You can do exactly the same thing with the thicknessing bed, and you can also adjust the rollers to get the right tension. Now, if you're messing about with all that stuff, I'll warn you, it takes a while. And as I said earlier on, set aside at least a day and then expect over the next couple of weeks to make a few small adjustments here and there to try and sneak up on the sort of perfect setting for what you want. So, moving on from that, the build quality of this thing it's not bad. So obviously everything on the body like this is pressed steel. It's not flimsy pressed steel, it's relatively thick gauge, so that's good. The emergency stop button, the flappy paddle type, I really like that. The fence is a big thick bit of extruded aluminium mounted onto a cast iron bracket, and it's quite heavy duty. It's nice and straight and flat, and it's easy to get square. This is a bit flimsy, but then you don't really need it for much of them to keep your fingers out of the way, I suppose. But the two most important things, the planing beds and the thicknessing bed, they're really thick cast iron, and if you get a model that hasn't been dropped, you should find that they're extremely flat, just as these are. These are perfectly flat to within a tolerance as good as I can measure them effectively. So it should all work pretty well. So we've got a robust machine, nice flat beds, effectively infinite adjustability to get it set up perfectly well. The next thing to test out is the noise level. So in a minute I'm going to start this up. I'm not going to put my dust extraction on because that will drown it out, because this thing it's not just quiet for a planar thickness, so this is actually the quietest machine in my workshop now. So I'm going to run it without any dust extraction, then I'm going to pass a piece of oak over the top of this, and then I'll flip it into the thicknessing mode, and I'll run the oak through again. So this is what it sounds like just running on its own. So as you can tell, there's a bit of an induction roar when it first starts up, but then when it's running it's relatively quiet. Now if I just raise this up a little bit, and I'll pass a nice wide oak board through it. That's a little bit high. Okay. As you can see, compared to a normal planar thicknesser with straight blades, it's incredibly quiet. I wasn't raising my voice at all really to speak there, and the finish that it gives is very nice indeed. Right, let's put it into thicknessing. So again, just loosen this bolt off a little bit. So if I just move that out of the way, undo the fence and put that into its storage. I mean, as you can see, this is a relatively quick process. I mean, if you're going to be swapping backwards and forwards all the time, it may be a bit of an annoying thing to do, but it's really not that bad. Again, quite an induction row. That vibration is just this, and it's sometimes there, sometimes not. But this is still a relatively quiet operation. So you can see that this is, hold on a sec. That vibration, it's not always there, it's just because of how the hose is at the minute. It's sort of lifting it slightly and causing it to vibrate. But without that annoying noise, you can see that it's pretty quiet, even in thicknessing mode. Now I'm going to take 2mm off here, which is about as much as I'd like to do in any one go. So at 2mm it gets a bit louder, but I won't normally take that amount off. I'm just going to go with 1 more mil. And there we have it. So that's pretty much it for this spiral head planer thicknesser from Axminster, other than the value proposition, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So just to recap, you can adjust both the in-feed and out-feed table fully because you've got 4 adjustment bolts, 1 for each corner. You can do exactly the same thing to the thickness in bed. You can adjust the tension and height of the rollers. So with a bit of patience, you can get this exactly perfect if you wanted. There are a few drawbacks to this and a couple of things that I don't particularly like. So one of the drawbacks is that it's still only a 10-inch capacity, or 250mm. Another one is that the depth of cut you can take on a thickness in bed, in the manual it says about 3mm. In practice I've found that even 2mm is pushing. But then when you consider how tiny each of the cutter blades is, it's not surprising. Realistically, a millimetre at a time, and it'll give a perfect finish and will never struggle, but it just means it takes a bit longer. Right, on to some of the things that I don't like about the machine. One of them is this bolt. Why on earth haven't they given you a big knob so you can turn it easily? If you have that tightened up properly, you're going to need tools every time you want to move this out of the way. As it is, I don't keep it fully tight. I keep it just loose enough that I can do it with my fingers. But it'd be much quicker and much more comfortable if we had a big knob like that. Another thing that I don't particularly like is on the thickness in bed, there's like a little outfeed table with a roller, and that roller has an adjustable height so you can get it perfect. But I don't see why it needs it. Why didn't they just extend the thickness in bed? You know, it just adds a little bit of complexity that doesn't need to be there. Another thing that I don't think is great is the plastic adjustment wheel here. It's fine, it works. It just feels a bit flimsy. But that's about it really, and that's really nitpicking. So on to the value proposition then. When I bought this at something like £2,069 I think it was, that is a lot of money to pay for a planer thicknesser for a hobbyist like me. However, taking into account everything, so this is a lot more robust than the straight knife record power PT260 that I had. It's a lot more robust. The beds are also 10 centimetres longer. It's got infinitely more adjustability and an ability to fine tune it. The beds are very flat, it's much quicker to use, and it's a lot quieter than a straight knife planer thicknesser. That £2,000, it comes in at what, 3.5 times the cost of the record power. It is a big difference, but honestly I think it's worth it. Another way to think about it is when I was using the record power planer thicknesser, I had to have my ear defenders on all the time, and I was embarrassed to use it in my garage because of the noise that it made for the neighbours and stuff like that. With this, it's now my quietest machine in the workshop, and I'm honestly not joking when I say that. It's a lot quieter than my table saw, a lot quieter than my chop saw. It's massively quieter than my dust extractor, and it's actually quieter than my bandsaw as well. And if you're using it for short runs, I don't even need to wear ear defenders for sort of short planing and thicknessing sessions. If I'm going to be using it all day, I'll still put ear defenders on because it's obviously raised levels of noise. but it's even using it all day, I've never had a single complaint from the neighbours, and I've left this running, gone out of the garage and closed the doors, and you can barely hear it, to be honest. So it is really quiet. Yeah, it's quiet. It's a pleasure to use as far as planer thicknesses go. Not that any of them are particularly pleasurable to use, but you know, it does the job very well with the minimal fuss and minimal noise. So for the positive benefits it's brought to my workflow, I think yes, even at this raised price, which is probably what, £500 more than where it used to be, I think it's still worth it. If you can afford it in your budget and you've been thinking about getting a spiral head planer thicknesser, just go and get one. Yes, you do have to have a 16 amp power supply to run them, but honestly that doesn't cost much. So when I was getting this garage built and rewired, I had the 16 amp power supplies put in, and they took, well, I've had 2 power supplies put in. It probably added an hour onto the labour and then the cost of the materials, so what, maybe £100 from an electrician or something. It might be less, might be more, I'm just guessing there. But it's not a massive amount if you've already got power running into your garage. So yeah, that's about it. That's all the thoughts I really have on this. It's a brilliant piece of kit, loads of adjustment, expensive but worth it. Comment down below what you think. If you've used one, let me know what you think of it. If you've got any questions about it, ask in the comments and I'll get back to you. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.